Welcome to our Coach's Corner podcast. I'm your host, Eric, and I want to thank you for joining us as we turn up the heat by sharing our thoughts on health and fitness, along with some of our personal fitness experiences. Each episode, we'll be covering a wide variety of topics related to overall health and fitness with a no-fluff, real talk perspective.
Welcome everyone to this episode of Coach's Corner. Runner's Guide starts with the first stride. Today, we will be dropping some knowledge to any and everyone interested in running. I'm your host, Dana, and I also have host Eric and Amy here with me.
Hey guys.
What's up?
We want to welcome special guest, EXO's Assistant Program Manager, Bethany Mays, and EXO's fitness coach, Maida Laundrie, to the show today. Bethany and Maida have both been collegiate runners and have over 25 years of running experience combined. Both have completed multiple marathons, and Bethany has even completed a 50K ultramarathon.
I didn't know there was such a thing.
Like, no thanks, but say hi, guys.
Too many Ks.
Hi, what's up, guys?
All right, so we are going to turn it over to Amy to ask Amy and Maida some special questions today. So, Amy.
All right, you guys, so I have just a few for each of you. Normally I do like 10 for one person, but I split it up so you each get some. So, Maida, I'm going to ask you first. Are you ready? I want just the first answer that pops into your head. We go quick.
All right.
All right, here
I'm
we
ready.
go. What was the last trip you've taken?
70.
Cats or dogs?
Dog.
Sprints or marathons?
Marathon.
Do you like olives? Do you like olives?
Oh, do I like olives? No.
What's your favorite color?
Blue.
And what's your favorite exercise?
Running.
All right.
Nice.
We
Good
got a
job.
good person on the podcast then. Beth, are you ready?
Yes.
Are you a morning person or a night owl?
Neither?
What, do you just not sleep?
No, I don't like getting up early, and I go to bed pretty early.
Oh, okay.
So you get a lot of
You
sleep.
just sleep.
Yeah,
You're nocturnal.
try. Yes.
Beth is nocturnal.
Yes.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up overseas, Central Asia, and Kazakhstan.
Shoot, so cool. I had to put that in there.
Yeah.
Do you like pickles?
Yes. Not all pickles, but most.
Not all dill or sweet pickles?
Dill.
Okay, that's very important. What is your go-to snack?
Oh.
Doesn't have to be
Usually
healthy.
avocado.
Okay.
Maybe like
Interesting,
sweet potato
nice.
chips and avocado.
And what was the last race you did?
I did a half marathon about a month ago.
Cool.
Very cool, guys.
Nice.
Good job
Thank
on
you.
your
Awesome.
first go around. You know, as we start into this today, I think it's kind of a tough topic because runners get some beef from a lot of people because a lot of people don't like to run. Or it's like quite the opposite where they get into fitness and they're intimidated by anything else. So they do get into running. So it's kind of like you have your advanced runners, you have your beginning runners. This episode, we're really going to focus on starting with the first stride, basically. So going into how to get rolling, how to become more of an invested runner depending on your goals and your style. So I guess where I would start, Bethany, we'll start with you, is just how did you get into running? Both of you and Maida ran at the collegiate level, but was it something you were always interested in, or like how did you get into it?
Yeah, so I grew up really loving soccer. I played soccer with my brother's friends, and I loved it a lot. And now I think since we've even talked, I do recall a memory of me for some reason thinking I would run the hurdles at some point when I was a little
Okay.
girl. Like
Huh.
I somewhere had seen
Did you like
a
jumping
hurdle
over
race.
stuff like
Yeah.
as a kid? Okay.
And so I was just like, I'm going to do that someday. And so, but I didn't. I never did hurdles. I tried one time. But I had friends in middle school, and I had some crushes in middle school that were all trying out for the cross
So that's how we got involved.
That's how I got into
Okay.
cycling.
Okay.
No hate.
cross country and track, and so I joined, and I loved running fast, like I said, in soccer, and so it transferred pretty quickly to track, and I ran the 400, loved it, and did pretty well. I just kept extending my distances.
So how old were you, would you say, when you got into running?
About 12.
Okay. And Maida, how'd you get into running? Was it something that you were always interested in, or did you kind of grow into it?
Yeah, I definitely was something I kind of always loved. Ever since a little girl, I was one that just ran everywhere. I hated walking. I never wanted to do anything slow. Always was running into things, running around. Then that led to intermediate school track and cross country at 11. And from then on, I just fell in love. Took first place at my first cross country meet at age 11, and ever since then, I kept rolling.
Shoot, I'm way different. Like, I love running, but I was not, like, it was not something that I liked early on. Like, I always had my mom, like, write me a note to get out of running the mile in PE.
I was in
Like, it was not a natural, like, y'all are like, I loved it since I was born. No.
I was the one that wanted to do it for fun. Like, I would ask the gym teacher, hey, is it mile week? Like, I'm excited.
I was the opposite.
I was
I'm
just-
into
That's
it
Why
now,
I played
though.
golf, because you didn't have to run.
I was just more into like ball sports. I don't know, that was like more sprinting type, so we didn't really do a lot of running. It was something I never hated, but it was not something that I ever was like, I want to run cross country. So, and I think many people would say like they hate running. So like, tell us, what parts do you guys love about it? And then has that changed as you've gotten older? Maida, we'll start with you. So like, what parts do you love about it? Has that changed since you've gotten older?
Yeah, when I was running competitively, I was really drawn in with the environment. I loved being with people who love to run. I love that competitive drive to try to pass people. I love the spectators. Even with the spring and fall that came with cross country and track, I just love that you don't really have to put a lot of thought into running. I mean, you do strategically when you are racing, but overall there's not plays to remember. There's not necessarily any sort of complicated foot movement. You're just going, which I really like. And now that I run more for that enjoyment factor, I do still do a little bit of competitive running, but nowhere to where I used to. I've really turned it into more of that stress reliever for me. It's a really great time for me to just let go of any negative energy I have and release it all as I'm running and pop in some music, lace up my shoes, and just go.
What's
So
your
that's,
go-to
Definitely
song?
that mindset. Ooh, country. Honestly, everyone bashes me for it, but if I just any good country
What?
song, even like a slow country song, country gets me going when I'm running.
Interesting.
I can listen to
I'm all
slow
over the
music when
place.
I run.
You can or
I
can't?
can.
I can too, yeah.
When I run, I can, but like if I'm working out, it's like a strong no.
Oh, no, I'll listen
Strong,
to like
though.
some acoustic
Oh,
when I'm
same.
working out. No, even
But
when I'm working out, though.
lifting, I can't. When
I'll
I'm
do
lifting,
bluegrass,
it's
I'll
like
do some folk, some indie, some like...
that's all my type of vibe when I'm running.
yeah,
when I'm
okay,
running.
yeah. I can lift to that too,
And
as
I
of
would
recently.
prefer that, I think.
Yeah.
What's yours, Beth? What's your go-to?
I have a variety. I'd say a lot of hip hop, pop, some alternative rock or
Yeah.
alternative music. But then I do like a couple slow songs in there. Just
If
get
you're in
me
the right
feels.
mindset.
Yeah.
So, like,
yeah.
what parts do you love about running? And then we'll transition kind of what we just talked about on, like, what type of mindset do you feel like they need? So, how'd you get into loving it first?
Yeah, well, I can definitely relate to some of what Maida said. I think especially when I started running in high school, that's when I first got introduced to just a really like core group of girls, and like our cross country team was really good, and so just that culture there in high school, it was just really intense but fun culture. We all pushed each other, and so I felt like there was a lot of just I guess just being really proud of the accomplishments that you were doing on a day-to-day basis, feeling really tough and feeling like people really respect and were like, wow, I could never do that. And it just kind of makes you feel good. So that was part of it. And then I just really like exploring. I like being outdoors. That's probably more of what drives me right now, is just getting outside, being outdoors, and then really appreciating what I'm still able to do.
Is that the same when it's cold? So it's getting colder now?
It kind of goes up and down, especially for me over the last couple of years. But yeah, I'd say even still over the cold. And I think that's kind of where for me kicks in of being like, I'm tough. Like I can do this.
I think it is like when you have like all your cold running gear and like you're outfitted out and you're like, I'm going to go for a 6 mile run, whatever. And it's a very big sense of accomplishment. Like I feel like when you've seen the distance that you've went, it's colder weather. Most people won't do it. It's a
Good point.
sense of like, I took my mind to another level.
I'm
I
a
think.
badass. Here we go.
100%. So what would you guys say? I know you probably hear this a lot, especially because you guys are marathon runners. and you've done this for a really long time. What do you say to people that generally think like, I am not a runner? Everyone, I have said that. I think I said it in this podcast. Like, I do like to run a little bit, but I would not consider myself a runner. But what would you say to those people? Beth, we'll kick it off with you.
Yeah, kind of going back to a little bit of my mindset beforehand, I feel like I used to think that running was just the best, like the superior way to work out. And so, you know, I used to think like, oh, running can be for everyone. Anybody can run. But I've come to realize like, yeah, that's not really true. And it's okay if you don't want to run. So I think you have to ask yourself first, like, do you want to be able to run? Is that important to you? Ask yourself why. Why do you want to run? And if you want to be able to run, then you can call yourself a runner if you're consistent with it, and if you enjoy running. It's kind of like baking. If you bake and you like to bake, you're a baker.
Yeah.
Amen.
So same thing with running. You don't have to be, you know, a certain speed. You don't have to run a certain amount each week or go on super long runs. But if you do it and you like it, then you're a runner.
Yeah, it's not like you have to run. You have to be able to run 1 mile before you can call yourself a runner.
Yeah.
Like, no, you can just go out and do a little bit of
Run
this and
at
that.
200, you're running. So
Yeah.
like, Maida, would you say anything differently, or is it kind of on those same lines that Beth mentioned? for
Yeah,
people?
it's truly on the same line. Beth hit it really good on the head. I actually feel bad like when someone says like, "Oh, I'm not fast, I'm not a runner." I'm like, truly, any speed, any size, like there's no true definition of, like in the definition book that says, or in a dictionary that says, this is what makes a runner. Like if you want to be a runner and it's something that you enjoy, just do it. And it could be a slow walk run, it could be a Olympic marathon runner. Like anyone can be a runner. So I feel like what Beth said was pretty spot on. Exactly how I feel.
Do you feel like a lot of this is a mindset game? Like anything else that we talk about is like getting people in the right mindset to start something. What would you say to those people that, you know, what type of mindset do you feel like they need to get to just to get started, just to hit that first stride? Beth, we'll go with you.
Again, I think it's just asking why. You know, why is it important to you? Digging down and figuring out a good motivation. So I think that can kind of help get some of those steps rolling, and help you create a plan for how to get out the door. Just some things that are helpful for me is just planning my day around it. So especially for me, and even more so in the last couple months since I just got married, I feel like the biggest barrier for me to going out and getting a run in is if I feel like I'm going to be behind in other areas of life. Like, I will probably be running late to work if I get in a run this morning, because it always takes me so much longer to get ready than I think it's going to take if I go for a run before work, or I won't be able to fold laundry, or, you know, all these things. And so if I have a plan in place for how to get all these other things done, and I'm like, I've already decided the day before, earlier that day, that I'm going to go run at, you know, in the afternoon or whatever, then it's so much easier for me to actually get that done.
Amen. And we talk about planning all the time. It's like that leads to everything. Maida, what would you say on the mindset front of getting people into the right mindset for becoming a runner, for taking a first stride?
Yeah, well, I definitely had that same thing that Beth said about kind of thinking about what's your why. Why are you going for this run? Are you training for something? Or if you're starting out, have that, being able to kind of visualize your goal in this can really help push through that mental barrier. Also stay positive. Running is uncomfortable, whether you've been doing it for 10 years, whether you're just starting out and this is your first run. Sometimes runs can be uncomfortable. It's hard to build up, but you just have to stick with it and know that your results will be there, and you just have to keep believing that. And I also, something, if you are running and you've been running, let's say just a mile even, it helps for me. I do this actually quite a bit when I'm running, as I break it down. I like to think about it more scientifically. So I have 1 mile left. That's 4 laps around the track. So you visualize that. It kind of helps the run go faster if you're trying to get to a certain mile point and things like that. But truly just staying as positive as possible. I try to think of running as not a gift, but I'm lucky to be able to go out and do it. So that's just one of the things I think about if I'm dragging my feet on getting out the door, and just knowing that it's good. It's good for me to get out and go my run. I'll be way more successful throughout the rest of the day if I can get my run in. So definitely I keep that in mind.
So just to be clear, you guys as runners still experience the chest burn, leg burn, all that stuff running that a lot of us do that can only make it a mile.
Yeah, especially when you're first starting out, and especially in the cold weather, it takes you a little bit of time to get used to the cold. So after you've been running a couple weeks in the cold, then that burning sensation isn't there anymore. But it's real whenever you first start.
That's good to know.
Oh, yeah.
Makes me feel better.
I've heard some things with like just general fitness too, like all around, is that the buy-in takes a little bit, but like once you're 5 to 8 minutes into like the saying is true, like the hardest thing to do is start. So like once you get started, it actually is really uncomfortable in specifically a run, but say you're doing like a workout class or maybe lifting, not as much, but you still feel that sense of like wanting to leave. That would be like 5 to 8 minutes. And then once you break that barrier, you're good. And I like when I used to run, and I don't consider myself a runner, but I used to run about twice a week. And they were like 3-mile runs, 4-mile runs, things like that. My first like 5 to 8 minutes are pretty uncomfortable, where I'm like literally debating with myself if I want to run just back onto the car. But then once I pass just that barrier, and it's like you're switching to a different energy system too, and your body's actually warm for like it's prepared now, then it's like, oh, okay, I got this.
I remember that when we I ran cross country in high school, and for Louisville people at Seneca, there's bathrooms, and then there's like this one tree that we'd run to, like, and then we would warm up. But I always remember that run, that little warm up to like the tree and back, was always so miserable, and I felt like heavy and awful. I was like, this is gonna suck today. But then like the actual run was fine. It is like your initial running thing is like getting everything fired up sucks.
Yeah, I can definitely attest to that. Like even just warm-up drills, but especially getting started with a run, it always does feel pretty miserable. You feel heavy, and you're just like, ugh.
It's like, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do this.
Yeah. And especially like
get through that.
You're thinking in your mind too, like, I want this to go well. Like, especially if you're running for enjoyment. Let's talk about that for a minute. Like, it's a spring day, it's about to be summer, it's the first warm day, and you're excited to go outside, and you're starting a running routine. And then you get out there and you're like, oh, shit.
This hurts.
This is terrible. I want to go back. But, like, once you hang in there, like, it starts to, like, even out. Your breathing starts to even out. Everything starts to feel a little bit better. You're starting to pace. So, you know, as we talk about first getting started, what are some of the things that you guys recommend? If I'm just getting started, Bethany, what do you recommend for me to even start?
Yeah. So it is kind of goal specific, but usually if you're just getting started with just wanting to run a couple times a week, most recommendations is to start something similar to a Couch to 5K plan. So there is still kind of like a Couch to 1 mile, and it's even similar to whenever I had a stress fracture in high school in my foot, and the doctor prescribed me a similar plan of just like run 1 minute and then rest for 30 seconds or walk for 30 seconds. It's just like this interval-based thing that gradually increases over time so that you're not providing a lot of stress on your body in a consistent time, but then gradually building up. So I do that for a couple weeks and just gradually start to increase. So there's a lot of different plans out there, but usually starting with like a 1 to 2 work to rest ratio, and then begin to increase how much time that you're running, eventually getting up to minutes of work at a time, and then maybe 1 minute or 30 seconds of walking or jogging, and then eventually trying to get all the way up to a mile without stopping, and then building up after that. So
I think that's where a lot of people like may have a misconception, or maybe they take a different approach than we just mentioned. Like, everyone wants to just get out there and I'm going to run a mile.
Yep.
That's it.
Yep.
I'm going to run a mile. And it's like, why? Like, for what? It's like, you know, it's like, what is the why behind that? What is the goal behind that? And is that how you really should start? Like, should you analyze it like Beth said? And, okay, you want to run 2 times a week for 2 miles. What do I need to do that, instead of like, I'm just going to go out and it, like, say you do want to run, if somebody did come to you, Beth, and said, I want to run a mile as fast as possible, and that's their overall goal, like, what would your recommendation be there? Eric wants to do this, by the way.
Well, backing up just a little bit, I think people like if they have run in the past, they don't realize how quickly they lose that. And so that's part of the reason some people just go out and they try to run 1 mile straight
That's me.
without stopping, because they don't realize how quickly that's going to go away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's that. I had another thought, but I lost it. But going with the example of trying to PR in a mile or trying to run a really fast time, my recommendation would be to try to do more runs. So I'd say at least running 3 times a week. And then you want to do some more interval-based workouts. So I'd say at least 1 or 2 interval-based workouts a week, and having like 800-meter repeats, maybe some 400-meter repeats, and doing kind of like, I'd say probably, 4 to 8 or a little bit more depending on which one you're doing, so that you're getting a good amount of reps in with decreased rest over time, over the weeks that you're training, so that you're trying to get some of that speed in. But then you'd also want to have one day of a longer kind of endurance push day. So maybe like a 3-mile run would be kind of your max.
So then, like when you go to run that 1 mile, you've consistently been running a 3-mile trek, right? And so like, one, it's going to be a mental thing that
Yeah.
I have this 1 mile and that's it. But also, like Beth said, a lot of people will run, their goal is to run the fastest 1 mile, but their training is really 1 mile all the time. And it's like, how fast can I run it today? And it's
Yeah.
like, but you're not really training to improve that unless you are incorporating some tempo runs, some 400 repeats. And what we mean by 400 is like 400 meters, where you're resting in between, repeating, where you're actually running very fast and you're pushing to a different energy system than you would
Okay. Nice.
regardless. So anything different there, Maida, that you may have done in the past or you would recommend from just a beginning standpoint?
Yeah, make a goal. Number one, is depending on whether you're planning to run because you just want to start for that enjoyment or you want to actually start training for a race. I feel like when you're training for a race, your timeline is a little bit more specific, depending on when that race is. So let's say you find a 5K and you're looking to run it in a month. So that's 4 weeks. So then you kind of have to break it down, and that's kind of how fast you should start increasing your miles or increasing, your distance, and then as well as your speed, if that's what you're looking for. But I still say if you've never really ran before and your goal is a 5K, still start out with that walking running ratio combo, and then building that up each week, running a little bit more, but keeping in mind that you don't want to push it anything too fast. It's like like Dana, you had said before, you don't just go sprint a mile because you want to run a mile. You have to work your way up, but keep increasing so that run time it increases. So you're going to be running longer, and that walk time will decrease. And then if you are training for that 5K, which is 3.2 miles, you want to get up to about that 3 mile mark, and don't really feel like you have to go much farther than that in your training, unless you're planning to then run more than that after that, so that way you can just stay fresh, prevent injuries, things like that.
Couple of things. So I got a question, but I got to tell a story first because it's funny, because it goes right to the point of people just jumping right in there thinking that they can do it. There's a guy said he could do a 4:5:40 time, so a sprint. Hasn't run in years. Bigger guy. Of course we have to bet him that he can't do it, right? He takes off, goes for the run, stumbles, falls towards ACL, towards MCL, towards hamstring. Just from trying to do this without doing anything.
So let's talk warm-ups, folks.
Right. So my question, though, leading off from that is, you want to start with the stuff you guys just mentioned, but from a fitness side, should they do strength training with the legs and everything before as well?
Yeah, I think that goes into the component of like where I wanted to really go next with you all is, what are the components that people should focus on when they're starting a running program? So, okay, their goal, whatever it may be. We're talking from like a movement standpoint, and we'll tackle like our 4 pillars in movement, nutrition, recovery. We'll tackle those today. But from just a movement standpoint, Beth, what would you say people really should focus on at that point?
I'd say a huge component to focus on would just be moving in different planes of motion. just with running, it's always going to be in a straight line ahead. Maybe you're running over roots or maybe you're turning right or left, but it's usually going forward. And so just getting in some of the lateral movement, maybe some reverse lunges, those kinds of things that are just going in different planes of movement is going to help your overall body to be a little bit more resilient and a little bit more able to handle some of those rough days so you don't break down and start to have injuries.
I would say, too, to answer, and to go off that is, I feel like strength training is not a primary focus with people when they're looking to run only. They only think of needing to run. So, Maida, do you do any strength training? Would you recommend that to your clients? What's that look like for you?
Yeah, I definitely recommend strength training. And I know there's a lot of stigmas of runners going into the gym to lift weights. They're going to get big. They're going to not be able to run as fast. But truly, that's the opposite. When you're lifting, you're helping prevent injuries. You're strengthening your leg muscles. I lift typically 2 to 3 times a week, working lower body, but as well as upper body, back, strengthening those muscles so I don't get injured. And so, and also so I can push faster when I'm running. So doing a lot of not crazy heavy weights, but doing lots of reps and just working on just kind of that toning factor. But I do it mainly for that strength, and it does actually help me build endurance as well.
So what does some of your warm-ups look like? Maida, you're in Green Bay. It is cold.
Yeah.
What does your warm-ups
look
look
like?
like?
Today, actually.
It snowed
What?
today?
Yeah.
No.
Yep. We
It's
were getting a little
October.
snow flurry.
It's October
this morning.
17th.
What the heck?
No,
Yep,
thank
the new
you.
record.
Pass.
No, warm up, yeah. When it's cold and you're about to go outside, or even if you're inside lifting or running on the treadmill, you have to have a good warm up. It's crucial. You want your muscles to be warmed up before you go out for a run, and that's where some of a dynamic warm up comes in. Which is dynamic is that basically you can be standing on one end of the room and you're doing stretches that'll walk you from that one end to the other. So that would be bringing your knee and bringing it up to your chest, giving your knee a hug, doing high knees, butt kickers, Frankensteins, you're kicking your legs all the directions, really loosening it up. I do a lot of broad jumps before I go for a run. I get really tight calves, especially in the wintertime, so I'm doing a lot of hamstring scoops. Well, first for the hamstring, but then just anything to really loosen up those calves. A lot of calf raises, things like that. It's really important to get a good warm-up in and get that blood flowing. It'll help make not only your run feel better, because if you've ever gone out on a run, especially in the cold weather, without any sort of stretching, you will probably feel it way more the next day, and your run will feel a lot worse. So definitely getting that nice movement in before the actual run or lift is really important.
How long do you warm up for? What's a...
I warm up typically 10 to 15 minutes, depending on how much time I have. Another thing, too, with that warm-up is if you are, let's say you are running a race or something, I always like to get in a really short warm-up jog, 5-10 minutes of a really slow, comfortable jog pace that you would do right before, maybe half an hour to 20 minutes before you did a 5K race. So that's another warm-up that I like to incorporate if I'm doing any sort of race as well.
What's a cool down look like for you guys? Because I know for me, I'm not going to lie, I'm done with the workout. I'm done. I get my last...
Same.
I
Go right to the car.
I get my last, lift in, and I go get a drink of water, and then I just...
It's the walk from the gym
leave.
to the car. That's the cool down.
I know I'm in the fitness industry and shouldn't do this, but I do feel like it's a little bit more important with cool downs. Beth, Maida, what's your cool down look like, and why is it important?
I'd say especially after a shorter distance race, like a 5K, if you're pushing the pace really hard, then it's really, really important to get in some sort of slower jog afterwards. Just help to flush out some of that lactic acid, just help the legs to feel a little bit better. And then doing some more static, so holding a stretch afterwards. I usually will stretch my hamstrings, my calves, my quads, glutes, those kinds of things. That's usually it.
I feel like no one pays special love to the actual foot.
Yeah.
Actually the only reason I know this is I have really flat feet.
Yeah, same.
So my feet constantly hurt if I'm starting to run a lot. Like, yes, I may be getting pain in my ankle, but it's coming from my foot. The problem is, like, my foot is so tight. So, like, a lot of times I'll do trigger point, but I'll also do, like, a hyperized gun where it's, like, massage techniques on the bottom of my feet.
Is that the same as taking like a tennis ball?
Yeah,
Kind of
roll them out, showing them some love because they just like took a beating.
Yeah.
So I think that's a few things that have just like I even overlook and something that I'm not a runner. So when I start on my feet and my feet aren't used to that, they're like, oh, no, not at all.
I think that's also where strength training comes into for the feet. Is I think that's one place that a lot of runners overlook, and just doing exercises where you're like picking up a towel with your toes or like just kind of scrunching your foot together is really helpful. And so that might help to combat some of that soreness and tightness that you experience.
I want to warm up. I need to warm up and cool down more. I'm more of like the weekend warrior type runner. Like I won't run for like a week or two, and then I'm like, I'll do 4 miles, see if I can still do it. And then I'm like sore for a few days, so I don't. And then like
that's where my
and then
warm
like the
up
next
turns
week
into the run.
Yeah, yeah.
Then
so,
the
like,
next week you do the same thing.
Yeah, and I never get any better,
Same.
and I
Just
never.
same.
I just like I want to see if I still. But I mean, I do lift a couple times a week, and I do like teach spin twice a week. So I'm like generally, I'm not like going couch to 4 miles every few weeks, but like, yeah, I'm not consistent.
When I do that, I do the same thing, Amy. Like I'll get a wild hair and I'll be like, okay, I'm gonna run once a week for this amount of time. And instead of doing like 1 to 2 miles, I'll be like, I'm gonna do 6 miles every week. And my hips hurt so bad after the fact because it's like, what are you doing? You have not done this.
My knees.
Yes, and then you're going out there and just doing it. So I think a lot of that, and we'll talk about recovery here, but I want to touch on nutrition first. Everyone talks about pre and post runs, hydration. Yeah, I want to focus on that, but like I think overall nutrition plays a big part on your day to day if you're consistently running. So what does that look like for you guys? Maida, I'll start with you, and then I want to break down like pre and post runs. But what's your overall nutrition look like?
Yeah. Well, number one, I know a lot of people know carbs. Everyone says runners eat a lot of carbs. Definitely want to get those good carbs in, though, for sure. I eat a lot of sweet potatoes. I make a lot of whole grain pastas. Getting in a lot of fruits and veggies, just good vitamins, minerals, all that good stuff, as well as protein. You burn a lot when you run, and you really need to replenish yourself. And so I really try to find some things that are going to keep me full and focused and really fuel my run. So doing a lot of chicken and fish as well, just those good things. But I also I have a sweet tooth, so I love some dark chocolate and some tasty snacks like some popcorn after a nice run or something like that. But really just having that really good variety is really important. I know as well, I was going to say, is your gut's affected a lot when you run. Sometimes you get some stomach issues from running. So making sure you have a good amount of fiber, but not too much. And just really keeping that variety is a way to really help yourself just feel good throughout the week, especially when you have more training or you're putting in some longer runs. I don't know if Beth does similar things like that.
Yeah, I definitely try to eat a good amount of veggies. I love salmon, so I usually try to eat that somewhat consistently. Chicken, nuts, try to eat whole grain bread. Doesn't always happen, but try to eat more whole grain, oatmeal, those kinds of things. And then I was trying to, I guess I am still kind of starting to do more kefir to combat some of the issues that Maida was talking about with gut. It is, a lot of runners do have a lot of gut issues. And so,
do you know why that is?
I've looked into it, and there's some things that I'm not exactly 100% sure. I think from what I've seen, it looks like it stems from hydration. So like electrolyte imbalance.
Gotcha.
I love electrolytes. Big electrolyte fan over here.
And like she said, also fiber. So that's another important, key player. But I don't know for
sure. There's a commercial out there. I think it's maybe a Jack Link's beef jerky where the guy opens his jacket. He's got the goops, all this and that stuff. Do you guys use any of that on your long runs, like the gels or the little powder packs?
Yeah, I've gotten into using the name of it. The powder's escaping me now because I just started using it, but it is an electrolyte mix. I was using Goos, and I still have some, so I will probably use them until I'm done with them. But I just recently started using this Martin goo gel thing, and so that's been a lot easier to digest. It's not as sugary, and it's just a little bit easier on your digestive system.
But how, like, but those are only for longer runs.
Yeah,
like,
for longer
just
runs.
a person running a mile would not need
Not somebody walking into the
Goos.
office just.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you don't need those cues.
Yeah.
Let's talk about hydration though. Like on average, I think people have a total they have no idea how much water plays a part in your day-to-day life and how you feel. Like, I know people that don't drink any water. It's completely sodas, whether it's diet or not, and their joints hurt, their skin looks terrible. So can we talk about that a little
That's
bit?
my mom. She starts her morning with coffee and ends it with wine. There's
Yeah,
no water in the
there's
middle.
No water in the middle.
Like, how are you alive
Yeah,
here?
coffee has a little water in it,
I
but
mean.
it's like if you're properly hydrated, how much better you feel just throughout your joints. So like from you guys, like what's average that people need? Maida, we'll go with you.
I would say, what?
Go ahead.
No, I would say for sure 11. So I was doing a lot of research, too, because I'm one to struggle with my water. I've gotten a lot better as I've done more longer runs because I definitely feel it in my runs when I do not drink enough water. But 11 to 15 cups is, on average, for men and women is what you need, and that's just minimum. That's if you're just getting up, going to work, coming home. If you run, you sweat a lot, and especially being in Wisconsin on a winter day when you are going out for a run, you don't sweat that much because it's freezing. Any of the sweat is pretty much frozen on you, but you lose a lot of salt when you sweat. So in continuing to add that water, and that's where those when Eric mentioned like adding in some Goos or those electrolytes, getting in those extra electrolytes after your run is extremely important, especially when you're training.
I've heard, what is it, like half your body weight in ounces? It's like if you're
Usually.
100 pounds,
Yeah.
you want like 50. But that's even before you sweat.
Yeah.
That's just like
That's before
living.
Every
that.
day.
And,
yeah.
and definitely remembering that it's more of a lifestyle, because especially going back to high school cross country, I know my coaches, they used to always insist that we were staying hydrated even the day before our races. And so that still affects you if you're not hydrated, throughout the week, and then you try to make up for it just like right before
It's not
you
like
go
you
for
can
a
pound a
run.
bottle of
Yeah.
water right before.
And if you're getting like really into it, if you're starting to do more performance or you're starting to do really long runs out in the heat, then there are resources, calculators, all sorts of things that you can look up to weigh yourself before and after and figure out how many ounces you need, how many grams of electrolytes you need. So it can get a little bit more complicated.
Is water still the go-to, or should you do something else like Gatorade, the stuff that has high electrolyte type stuff?
Usually after about an hour and a half, 2 hours, depending on intensity, you would want to start to switch to an electrolyte blend.
Okay.
So we talked about nutrition. We talked about movement. We mentioned mindset earlier, but I still feel like this is a big component. It's one of our Exos' actual pillars that we focus on. I want you to talk to us personally about like, how do you prepare for your first run? Like, what's your routine? It could be your first run of the year. It could be your first marathon of the year. What's your guys' routine? Beth, what's that look like for you?
That's a hard question, because I think it does depend on what the scenario is. If I was going to go for a run, say tomorrow, because I haven't run a whole lot since my race a couple weeks ago. If I was going to go for a run tomorrow, it'd probably be in the morning. And so I would get up and try to make sure I had a little bit of breakfast to eat, not a whole lot, but maybe some oatmeal, maybe half a banana with some peanut butter. And then I would warm up inside because it's getting cold. And partially you don't warm up as well if you go outside. Partially it's just kind of miserable if it's cold outside and you're standing out there. So I'd warm up inside. And then I'd usually take my phone with me. I have this, I really love it. I have this thing called a koala clip, and it clips onto the back of my my sports bra or my shirt. And so I can keep my phone with me if I don't have pockets
cool.
or something.
Very cool.
I like that.
I really like it a lot. So I'll take my phone, usually pepper spray.
Safety first.
Yeah. Usually have
It's a
music
thing.
going, and then I'll head out the door. So yeah, that's pretty much it. It's not too complicated. It
Okay.
gets more complicated for races and long runs.
Yeah. Maida, what's yours look like?
Yeah, so I'll just kind of talk about when I did my marathon a couple weeks ago. I like to get up really early before the race, so the race starts 7 a.m. bright and early. But I was up by 5 to get a really good stretch in and just kind of mentally prepare. A lot of running takes a lot of mental preparation just to kind of get yourself in the right mindset. Usually I eat banana or a little oatmeal too. Actually, that's my go-to, or just like some sort of granola bar. And then usually right before the race, I'll have an energy goo, depending on the length, just for that little extra kick right at the beginning. But I'd say my favorite part is when you go to, like, you start at the start line and everyone's a little quiet. Usually the announcer's, like, starting to do the countdown. And that's honestly my favorite part about getting in that run routine, because you put a lot of work into it. Your preparation's about to pay off, and you really just focus on your goals and kind of think back to what your plan is for the run strategically. And then you just kind of, I usually have music because I need music to run. It's definitely something that helps me run faster, I feel. And then I just go at the start line. So, but my biggest thing with that routine, just for advice, is just make sure you have enough time to use bathrooms and to stretch and to get yourself ready, eat a little food, because nothing's worse than racing to the start line because you're running behind. So always
Not
give
a good
yourself
feeling.
enough time.
Not a
Yeah.
good feeling at all, I would say. I would say to kind of close this out, and we're going to touch on a few topics because I want to hear what you guys wear, what your go-tos are, what your staples are. But I want to ask before, like, how should people expect to feel after they start running? I think that's a solid question that, like, maybe they're not sure of. Like, what would you say to people that, we're talking to more of your beginner to intermediate runners, maybe looking couch to 5K or maybe looking to get into it? What can they expect to feel when they start?
I'd say definitely sore, and I really noticed this a lot when I was running on grass, or whenever you start to run in spikes, your calves are really sore the day after a race, or when you start running on grass. So just soreness in calves, feet, legs, all that kind of stuff. But then also maybe a little hungry, and
I get so hungry when I start running again. Like after I haven't run for a while and I start running again, I get very hungry.
Same.
yeah. But I think if you're doing it consistently, you're going to notice
goes away.
an increase in mood, just like
Yes.
energy. So
Endorphins.
that's what I definitely
Endorphins
notice.
make you
is-
happy.
Make people happy.
is the mood.
Happy people don't kill people.
Happy people don't shoot their husbands.
Just the thing from Legally Blonde. That was it. That was a reference. So what do you guys wear? What's your go-to? Like, as a lifter, that's my primary choice of exercise. I definitely have my brands. What's important to you for gear? And do you have any favorites? Maida.
I would first off, before any outfit, the shoes. Shoes are very important. You want to have a good pair of running shoes that are relatively in the range of miles. You don't want a shoe that you've been running in for 500 plus miles or you've had for 4 years. If they've been worn a lot, that's where you can get a lot of injuries. But then also for clothing, just a rule of thumb that I learned really early on, and it does change because I'm a person that gets really cold really often, so I always overdress. But always dress 15 to 20 degrees lighter than it is outside. So if it's 30 degrees outside, dress like it's 50 degrees outside, because once you get rolling, you will sweat, you'll get warm. So that's a great way to not overheat so much. But I'm a big Nike fan, so I wear a lot of Nike running clothes. That's my go-to.
That's your go-to. Beth, are you different? Do you like the same thing? What do you like?
It's changed a little bit. I am definitely still a Nike sports bra person.
Okay.
So that's always my go-to is the Nike Medium Impact sports bra. And then I used to run all the time in shorts. Now it's a little bit more leggings. I'm really loving the Fabletics leggings.
Nice. Before you mentioned it earlier, you take pepper spray on your runs. Like, I think this is important, and I think this is something that's overlooked. Like, safety tips that you guys have used that you can share with our users when you're running outside or you're going to parks that you can provide for runners.
Yeah. So like you said, I do take pepper spray. I have like a little running handle holder thing for the pepper spray, so I can just carry it with me. I sometimes take my dog. She's not a great runner, so she doesn't always help a whole lot. And I usually will, I'll either be sharing my location with somebody, a friend or my husband. I'll tell somebody where I'm going. Might someday start carrying a gun when I run. I don't know for sure yet.
Okay.
But yeah, and usually just try to not run in the dark or just be smart about where you're going.
Or like clothing,
yeah,
right? Like if
reflective
you're,
Reflective,
yes. I think I see people once a week. I coach in the morning at like 5:30 a.m. and so I see runners a lot, and they are just in dark clothing.
Yeah.
And they're running. I mean, not far from me at all. We work out outside. I can't see them. Like, and I'm not
They're
in
just
the
waiting
car.
to get hit.
And I'm
Yeah.
just kind of like, man, all you have to have is like a vest. Like it's
Yeah.
not that hard to put that on, but like that could truly save your life. So, do you guys wear any of those? Is that something that you would suggest?
Yeah, I don't have a reflective like vest or one of those like things that you can put around your chest, but I do have a couple of reflective straps or panels on my clothing.
So
that
some
I'll
of the
sometimes
shirts
wear.
now, they make them with the reflective
Yeah.
like stripes on them, right?
Yeah.
They even make reflective shoes
Oh.
now.
My
and
mom
they
would
have-
always make me get those as a kid.
Yeah?
I always had to have reflective shoes for
Don't
some
lie,
reason.
you had the light up ones
Yeah.
when you stopped.
Well, yeah, that's different. But like I had, and like you can buy like tape, like just reflective tape.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think it's just too like letting someone know where you are. Like even if you're just going for a hike,
Yeah.
right? And you're like, you're not running or
Yeah.
anything, but it's just like, hey, I'm going here.
Yeah,
Like,
this
I'm
is
just
the
gonna
last
let you
place.
know.
I've
Yeah.
done
Well,
it.
they have those apps now that track like your actual path too, right? So people can see where you're at.
Another note that kind of made me think of, and I don't always do this anymore, but just like when I'm running on the roads or like running around other cars, I always try to make eye contact with cars at a stop sign. And sometimes they're wearing, like sunglasses or they have tinted windows and they can't see you, but I really try to make sure that like we both see each other.
Because even
Yeah,
at like
that's
a
a good point.
crosswalk, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you don't see that person to your right, and they have the right of way, but it may have just changed, and you come up too high
Yeah.
on the crosswalk. Like
What's
Yeah.
that first street here? Is people fly around that turn in that
Yeah.
crosswalk?
Well, that's the thing too. Like even at the
Jeez.
park when they have those walk like the crosswalks. Like yes, pedestrians have the right of way. There's signs everywhere, but like if it's you against a car, who's actually
Right.
gonna win this? So you gotta
Absolutely.
be careful.
as we close this out, Maida, I'm going to turn this over to you. What would be your biggest piece of advice just for someone that's looking to get started in running?
Yeah, for sure. First off, kind of how this whole part of this podcast that we've talked about, but anyone can be a runner. There's really no definition. Anyone can be a runner. You can do anything you put your mind to, and you'd be amazed what your body can do. Definitely trust the process. When training and when getting started, running does take time, but also have that reasoning of why you're running every day. And if it's something you really enjoy, just keep working at it. And it will get easier. You will get less sore. You won't be as ravenously hungry after your runs. It'll get better. So just keep it going if that's something you want to pursue.
Nice. Beth, what's your advice to our listeners today?
I think it depends on the person, but I think most people would benefit from having a community, a running community.
Good one.
Even if it's just something that they check in with once a month or something, but just having a running buddy or a run club that they get involved with, I think that makes a huge difference.
Even if like you find someone with the same goals, right? That maybe you don't run together every day, but maybe you run together like once a week or once every 2 weeks, something. But you have the same goal. You want to do like a couch to 5K or something like that, where you have someone with you that's like feeling what you're feeling, rooting for you.
Yeah.
You're rooting for them. So I'm definitely agree with that. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. Stay tuned as we have more from the Runner's Guide, where we're going to speak with more advanced runners and long distance runners, where we're talking to our half marathoners, our marathoners, and then our ultra marathoners next episode. Thank you guys.
Thanks, guys.